see whether some people's view that modern day democracy is more oligarchic than a system of government where the people themselves are at the helm of affairs when it comes to decision making. I mean, a system of government headed by powerfully few people is what we describe as oligarchy. But when we talk about democracy, essentially we are talking about a system of government where the governing power is exercised by the people themselves, whether directly or indirectly, and that is democracy. It was in its classical form in ancient Athenian Greek, where the people met together under one big tree and decided on how they wanted to govern their affairs. But now, in modern times, as a result of the astronomical growth in sizes of population of countries and the complexities involved in modern day governance, the practice where adults met together under one big tree and directly participated in police affairs is no longer feasible. Now we have indirect democracy, where people elect representatives to govern on their behalf. So now we have representative democracy. Now, because of the idea of representative democracy, democracy has been defined by Abraham Lincoln as being government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So in his Gettysburg Address, that's how Abraham Lincoln, one-time American president, defined democracy to be government of the people, government by the people, and then government for the people. Now, if you look at this definition, it means democracy now connotes representative government. Now, if you talk about government of the people, what do we mean? It means essentially representation of the people through elections, through vetting of ministers, through vetting of judges. So I'm talking about what government of the people denotes, and whether these are found in our part of the world. So if you say government of the people, essentially, yes, there is representation of the people, and this is brought about through the conduct of periodic elections. After representation of the people has led to the selection or election of leaders, there is also vetting of people who are appointed. Ministerial nominees are vetted, and judges are vetted. There is also elections held by there is also the fact that to a large extent the conduct of elections and their outcomes to a large extent are direct representation of the views and the choices of the people. And when you do this, then it means there is government of the people. So there's government of the people, like I said, when there is election, and the outcome of the elections to a large extent reflect the views and choices of the people. And then also there is vetting of ministers, and there is vetting of key appointees of state. When these happen, then you say that, well, there is government of the people. However, government of the people is challenged by several factors. Number one, you can talk about the fact that people with disabilities who are also part of the people are grossly underrepresented. They are grossly underrepresented in the scheme of things or in governance. Young people and women are also severely underrepresented. And then again, you can talk about the fact that parliamentarians who are supposed to be serving our interests serve partisan interests rather than constituent interests. So if members of parliament are serving partisan interests rather than constituent interests, then there can't be government of the people, or the concept of government of the people is severely undermined. you can also talk about the fact that politicians and appointees serve selfish interests and perpetuate the practice. It is our time to chop politics. Okay, so if politicians and appointees are serving their self-interest, and then they believe that, look, they have been elected to power and so it is their time to chop, then the concept of government of the people is also undermined. You can also talk about another challenge being the fact that metropolitan, municipal, and district chief executives are not directly elected by people. If the people are wise enough to elect directly who becomes their president at the national level, but when it comes to who would govern them at the local level, the president comes in to directly appoint those people, then it undermines the concept of government of the people. You can also talk about the fact that treating or monetization of our elections also constitute a severe affront to the concept of government of the people. If the conduct of elections is often fraught or saddled with vote buying and monetization, then you see, once those who are looking for power succeed in bribing or buying votes, they spend a lot of money, and the need to pay these monies back from wherever they may have borrowed the money from would undermine their requirement to prosecute an agenda that makes them serve the interest of the people and promotes the idea of government of the people. And so it becomes a severe monetization of our elections, also becomes a severe affront to the concept of government of the people. Maybe finally, another affront to the concept of government of the people is the high cost of elections. People pay too much. We pay too much in conducting elections, and that also, if you are expected to pay that huge sums, those huge sums of monies, just for the purpose of running elections, then it in a way also undermines the concept of government of the people. If there should be government of the people, then the cost of bringing about government of the people, i.e. elections, shouldn't be that expensive. Now, beyond that, Lincoln also spoke about government by the people. Now, there is government by the people in our part of the world, because you can say that there is multiple channels of participation. People are participating directly in elections. People are participating directly. So people are participating directly in the governance process through elections. People are participating directly or indirectly through radio discussions, through the traditional and social media, and then also you have governance and legal experts keeping officials on their toes all the time. And so, number one, multiple channels of participation, including the use of radio, traditional and social media, the idea of freedom of expression, and the fact that experts, political scientists, governance experts also have the opportunity to always express their views and opinions on key government decisions and governmental policies, actions and inactions. Give room or give meaning to the idea of government by the people. Now, the idea of government by the people is also severely hampered by the fact that, again, as I indicated earlier, in the case against government of the people, the fact that women, young people, and people with disabilities cannot fully participate in a governance process, or are not allowed. Channels are not created for them to fully participate in the governance process of our country or of developing countries, severely hampers the idea of government by the people. Again, every legislation comes only from the executive arm of government, and MPs are often seen as spectators. It's only recently that members of parliament are now beginning to introduce private members bill. But generally in Ghana, the history of Fourth Republic show. About 95% or 98% of legislations that have been passed or bills that have been passed into law emanated from the executive arm of government. But don't forget that it is Parliament that really serves as a microcosm of the entire population of Ghana. And so if legislations are oftentimes emanating from the executive arm of government and not Parliament, then the idea of government by the people is severely undermined. Also, diasporans are oftentimes excluded from participating in our decision-making process. Ghanaians and Africans who are members of their respective African countries on many occasions are not allowed to participate in decision-making process of the local politicking in their country, simply because they have traveled outside the shores of the country. Meanwhile, they do extensive financial contribution to aid the economies of these developing countries. If they are Ghanaians, if they are Africans, then they must have a say in decision making of their countries of origin. Again, the idea of government by the people is severely hampered by overprivileging party functionaries over all other Ghanaians or over all other people of Africa. So oftentimes the politicians and party functionaries are given privileges. So if you are going to look for a job and you don't belong to a party, the ruling party, a top party functionary, you are not given preferential treatment, or the preferential treatment tend to be given by party functionaries to the neglect of ordinary Ghanaians, and that undermine the concept of government by the people. The other bit is the fact that these party functionaries and top politicians would always jump the queue to access services that are meant for the poor and ordinary Ghanaians. So if you are talking about scholarship for ordinary people, children of cocoa farmers, for instance, and children of the poor, you see that party functionaries would always put in applications, and top government officials who are already well-to-do will jump the queue and put in applications to be considered for these scholarship opportunities. And then at the end of the day, the children of the poor and the needy are rejected, or they are sidelined, or they are bypassed. And this severely also undermines the concept of government by the people. Also, governments in our part of the world now tend to rely more on advice and counsels from spiritual advisors than people who are knowledgeable, and people who would be able to offer thought-provoking or credible advice. So party bigwigs, spiritual advisors are favored in terms of advice to the executive and to top political appointees than advice coming from the ordinary citizenry and people who are who are citizens and also have the competence and expertise to advise. And so if the government tend to listen to spiritual advisors and prophets and prophetess to the neglect of members within the body politic or citizens who are expert and who are well versed in areas of their specialities, then the idea of government by the people is also hampered. Maybe last but not the least is the practice of winner takes all politics, the practice of state capture and partisan monopolization of power, opportunities, and resources by a ruling government and its cronies to the exclusion of all Ghanaians because they are simply not members of the ruling party is what we describe as winner takes all politics. And as if winner takes all politics is not divisive enough, another practice is winner knows all politics, where the winner of an election, after taking all power and opportunities, would also pretend it knows everything and so will not consult experts. I mean, these two concepts, which are divisive and negative, also tend to undermine the idea of government by the people. The last is government for the people. Now, when we talk about government for the people, essentially, we are talking about democratic dividends. What are some of the advantages and dividends that democracy has conferred on us? What are some of the bread and butter dividends that democracy has conferred on a people? Essentially, you can talk about the fact that democracy has given us political freedoms, and these freedoms have increased because through democracy there is a concept or the belief in the practice of rule of law. And in Ghana, for instance, presidents until recently used to be meeting the press, and so sharing what they intend doing and what they are doing. And there is also several accountability mechanisms. Through democracy, there is what we call the legalization and liberalization of the airwaves, and this has created a lot of opportunities for journalists, and hence you have some economic growth. There's been social interventions like the free compulsory universal basic education, national health insurance scheme, free senior high school, free school feeding, etc., etc. These are some of the dividends you can talk about in terms of democracy and democratic practice, and these are some of the things that we will say have happened and give meaning to the idea of government for the people. However, democracy does not work to benefit women, and so in our part of the world, you can see the limited budgetary allocation given to the women's ministry, and the fact that they have severely been underrepresented. Here we're talking about even both women and children. Access to justice, again, as a challenge, is a challenge because it remains unequal for the poor and the less educated. In spite of the fact that there is government for the people, access to justice is expensive. If you are poor, you cannot afford the services of a lawyer. And the idea of legal aid is so severely underdeveloped because people do not really want to work pro bono. Over 6 million Ghanaians cannot afford, as of now, over 6 million Ghanaians cannot afford 3.6 pesos in a day. They live beyond a budget of 3.6 pesos in a day. It means that in spite of the fact that we have government for the people, people are still living in abject poverty. In spite of the fact that there is government for the people, people continue to suffer inadequate supply of water, health facilities, sanitation, power supply, etc. are still severely underdeveloped. Again, all resources and largesse go to families and friends of the ruling government. All resources and largesse, most of them go to the family and friends of ruling government in a manner that undermine the concept of government for the people. They get all the appointments, they get all concessions, and they get all benefits. They buy government cars, government lands, etc., etc. It's only family and friends and appointees of the ruling government that benefit all these things from all these things. And so these also are factors that undermine the concept of government for the people. If you put all these together, it tells you that then democracy is not really a system of government whereby the governing power is exercised by the people themselves directly or indirectly. It also tells you that the idea of government of the people, the idea of government by the people, and the idea of government for the people, all put together, are severely undermined and hampered in a manner that makes democracy a chimera. And so modern day democratic theory is better described as oligarchy. It's a system of government where the governing power of the state, instead of being exercised by the people directly or indirectly, is now exercised by powerfully few people who may be the educated, or who may be the rich, or who may be those who have been appointed in to office. So modern day democratic practice in Africa can at best be described as oligarchy. Thank you.